Hey everyone. Back with episode 7. And I'm gonna start with the couple that didn't, like the couple that didn't really seem to do all that much. Um, so that way I can kind of get them out of the way. So to start off with, I'm gonna talk about Chad and Belinda. Really, not much happened with them. Um, you kind of see them like in a few spots here and there with the episode, but um, for the most part, he was either out of town or with his daughter celebrating her. I guess either last semester in um, either last semester in college or being a lawyer or trying to be a lawyer, I should say, or the last semester for the time being. And so he went to go do a crawfish boil. Um, and so um, that's when Jalen comes over and speaks to Belinda. Um, and Jalen comes or says that she knows, like, she's happy to see her mom happy and getting affection from a man for once. So that's basically um, what goes on with them as far as that goes. And you kind of in the episode towards the end, so we see all the couples um, be in specific gender groups. So all the men come together and talk about their relationship, and all the girls go together and talk about their relationship. And you know, um, they Chad makes sort of like a game where they have to describe their wife in one word. And the ladies, when with the ladies, they all meet up and they talk about the relationship, except for Megan. She just says they're good, essentially. But that's where you see kind of Chad for the most part. Is either with the crawfish boil with him, Belinda, Jalen, and Josh, and Jesse Jr. I believe is his name. And uh, that's where Jalen brings up the post-up conversation, to kind of, I guess, go into them, because that's I'm going to talk about them next. But she kind of brings up the post-up conversation, wants to get it out of the way so it isn't on his mind. But Belinda is more concerned about the fact that she thinks that um, if something were to happen where they get divorced, um, and or like she becomes a stay-at-home mom and she ends up becoming uh, they end up divorced. Jalen's not going to be protected and all that stuff. And Jalen's like, well, I'm not going to be a stay-at-home mom if there's a post-nup in place. But that's basically Belinda and Chad. There wasn't really much of them going on in this episode. Um, like, I mean, as per usual in pretty much most of the episodes, you get like one little snippet of them, um, or you get them in like the background somewhere, and then that's really about it. Um, Now, as far as Jalen and Josh go, we see them first go skating together in a roller rink. Um, but after that, Dr. Pia comes and meets with them. Um, Dr. Pia creates a game where they have to stand with their backs to each other, and she will ask a series of questions. Now, when she asks the question, if they disagree, they will stay in place, standing in place. If they're neutral, they will take one step forward, and then if they agree with the question, they will take two steps forward. Um, Basically, all the questions end with them taking two steps forward, which means that they will agree. I didn't feel the need to write down specific questions, but I do remember one was like, I'm comfortable with speaking to my spouse with a spouse about finances or something like that. And one question I think was concerning exes, like, do you want to stay friends with the exes after you guys break up or something like that? And she explains, no, I don't want to be friends with exes, because I don't even remember what the hell she said, because I didn't really care. The only thing I did note was that Josh was explaining that he follows an ex and she follows him back on social media. Um, and he said that he will stop all communication with this ex because he felt Jalen's discomfort. But honestly, I don't know. I feel like they're agreeing a little bit too much here, for my taste. Like, all the episodes seem to be them agreeing about everything, and I'm just, I don't buy it. Like, they're always on this quote unquote high, according to her, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say that people always have to disagree, but if you're always agreeing, I find that fucking suspicious. Um, and as far as like the financial question goes, he had made a note of the fact that he doesn't feel the need to go forward with the postnup because she was in such agreement about signing it that he doesn't need to, and it was kind of backed up when he talked to his business partner, and his business partner was fine with it, as well, like her not signing the postnup. So that's really all there is as far as they go as well. I'm just, like I said, I'm more concerned that they always seem to agree with everything that the other says. Like, I just don't really buy that there's always going to be there's not going to be some friction. I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not saying that you have to always be in a disagreement, because that's not healthy either. But if you're always in agreement, I feel like eventually someone's gonna feel like they're being suppressed because they're not sharing their true feelings. And this is what I was kind of worried about earlier, with Jalen not speaking up about how he's always doing whatever. Like, they're always when they were on the honeymoon, they were always doing what he wanted to do and not anything that she wanted to do. And so that's why I'm like, I feel like she's gonna end up squashing her feelings and feel like she's being taken advantage of, and they're not doing anything that she would like to do, and she's gonna blow up at him. So in court, I feel like with the previews that we've seen, and even the preview at the end of this episode, I feel like that's going to come true. That she's going to end up saying something that he doesn't necessarily, or she's going to end up feeling, some sort of way because of whatever, and it's going to end up in this massive argument. So hopefully, it doesn't come to the fact that they end up arguing so much that, or they had this big old argument that it ends their relationship, because they seem fine. They seem like a cute couple. It's just, I mean, I just feel like they might end up having this this one explosive argument, and it ends terribly. So, but now going on to the couples that seem to have more going on, Derek and Megan. So we see that, they, according to them, they have come to a compromise on Zoe, and uh, after that, Megan brings Derek to her place, and it's revealed that she still has um, a Christmas tree up. Now, personally, I was thinking that this was filmed in like November, maybe even December, and Christmas hadn't passed yet. But I guess I was wrong, because she saw the Christmas tree up, and Christmas had already come and gone. So, like, girl, like, really, why do you have a Christmas tree still up in your place if Christmas is long since passed? That makes no sense. So, but yeah. Anyways, Derek then meets with his friend Scott, and they talk about them having kids, and he's saying, I want to have three, she wants to have one, and she brought up the fact that you know uh, having like birth scares her, and how he doesn't want to compromise on he doesn't want to compromise on having a big family and all that. So that kind of where it hangs for the moment until um, he goes to meet with her and she brings him to her place of like where she works. And so she's showing him around, and then they play a quick game of like darts or something like that. And so he brings up his conversation with his friend Scott about family planning. And so he asked if she wants kids, is excited about them, etc. And this is where I kind of agree with her. um, I'm kind of on her side in this conversation because I can kind of see where she's coming from. Um, Even in previous relationship or situations where they had disagreements, and she brought specifically with like Pastor Cal and all that, but she tells them like, look, we already talked about this. Um, yes, I want kids. That's why I froze my eggs. And yes, I'm excited. But labor scares me specifically. Um, and she's right. Like, you already did talk about this. You talked about this in episode 5. I remember it because I wrote it down. And um, so I don't understand. Like, I can understand why she's irritated because you already talked about this. And now you're saying you have feelings about her being scared about being potentially being a parent, or scared about whatever. um and I think what his issue is that he he wants 3 kids. He wants basically a semi like a medium sized family. If not, because to me a large family is more than 4 kids. But because I mean I'm one of 7 myself, so to me 4 kids is like nothing compared to 7. But I mean, so I would call that like a medium sized family. But he wants a medium sized family while she only wants to have one. So that's the crux of the issue, is that he wants more than just one. And instead of saying that, instead of voicing his concerns about saying, hey, look, I want more than just one kid, I definitely want 3. um he doesn't say anything about that at all, because he didn't say that in like, because he talked about it in the solo confessional in episode 5 when they were doing that game of asking questions from the cards. Like, he said that in a solo confessional, and he even said that in episode 1, like, or episode 2, when they were introduced, and Pastor Cal was talking to him, and he had said, Pastor Cal asked him, well, what if your spouse only wants to have one? And he's like, well, I can convince her. I'm like, and I was like, no, you're not. What we're not going to do is we're not going to try to coerce people into having more kids than they want and can handle. And that's the problem. Like, she knows that can't um she knows that she can't um she knows that she can't handle more than one kid. So why exactly you're trying to jokingly try to coerce her into having more kids is weird, because at the end of the day, um yeah, because kids are a big deal breaker for everyone. So to try to joke about quote unquote coercing, like convincing her to have more than one kid, this is how women end up being resentful in their relationships, and marriages, is because they're like, I mean, part of it is their fault because they knew that their spouse wanted more kids or wanted a kid, and they decided that they were going to do it like have kids or have more kids than they wanted, when they knew that their spouse wanted one. So it's not all on the spouse who wants more kids or wants a kid in general, but the spouse who's trying to quote unquote convince the spouse to have kids or to have more kids is at fault too, because you know this person doesn't want kids or doesn't want more than a certain amount of kids, and you're trying to coerce them into it anyway. So, I mean, and I think that's what the problem is that, like I said, he wants more than a certain amount of kids, and he's just not voicing that. And he didn't even voice it in this conversation. So and it is kind of blindsiding, because it's like, well, at this point, what I think Megan's issue is that he's having these feelings and opinions about her, and then he's voicing these opinions to friends and family, and then finally he's bringing it up to her. And at some point, it's going to get annoying, because at first I was like, I was on his side, because I mean, I can understand maybe he was a little hesitant to say anything because of the fact that, you know, it was concerning that she was defensive the very first time that he brought something up. And, you know, and it was like disconcerting and all that. So I can understand at first on his side, but now it's becoming a pattern that he's just continuously not bringing stuff up in the moment. And instead of bringing it up, he squashes his feelings down, and then it builds and builds and builds until he finally says something, and that. So I can see how that's irritating too. So I'm like, at this point, they're not communicating that well, like, at all, and they need to just kind of move away from each other. So yeah. And at some point, she brings up the fact that they've had sexual relations repeatedly, and most of those sexual relations were unprotected. So here I am, convinced that it was Megan who said that she's pregnant, and not Brittany, because, you know, the editors, what they decided to do, was they placed the voiceover of someone saying, "I'm pregnant. I need to talk to you. I'm pregnant," over or next to Will and Brittany's scenes in the season trailer. And by that, it's implied that it's Will and Brittany whereas Brittany saying that I'm pregnant and all that, and not somebody else. But as I, listened to the trailer several times, like a week or two ago, it sounded more like Megan. Now that I know her voice a little bit better, it sounds like Megan. And I'm just wondering, like, I get it, your husband and wife, but why, they're still essentially a stranger. Why are you having protected sex with someone that you don't really even know like that, or barely even know at all? Why? That makes zero sense to me. What's wrong with you? So I don't know. That was just weird as hell to me. And honestly, I'm starting to think that they're not going to make it, because they're like Will and Brittany. They're having the literal same issues over and over and over again, and it doesn't really look good in the future, because it looks like in the preview for upcoming episodes, he's packing his suitcase and leaving. And I don't think that's for when it's decision day. I think that is for when he's leaving before decision day even happens. And to be quite honest, I don't even remember them going to a decision, like them showing them Derek and Megan going to a decision day at all, in any of the previews, whether it's the season trailer or any of the upcoming promos at the end of each batch of episodes. I mean, I've seen Will and Brittany's, I've seen Rhonda or Belinda and Chad's. I think I've seen Rhonda and Pat's, and I can't quite remember if I've seen Josh and Jalen's, but I wouldn't be surprised if theirs was there. But Megan and Derek's, I don't remember seeing, but I could be wrong, because I could just be reacting to the fact that I saw him packing his things and looking like he's leaving before decision day. But anyway, the next couple I wanted to talk about is Will and Brittany. Theirs wasn't that much either, to be quite honest. Um, they seem to be better this episode. So I think that's why they didn't really show them much, is because they seem to be a little bit better. And also because of the fact that Will was partly gone for half the episode. The only time we saw him was like an initial scene that we saw of them where Brittany was making him dinner. Um, and when he was with the guys at the end of the episode, and they were talking about the relationship and all that. But he had gone on a business trip for work, and so that's why he was gone like most of the episode. And we did see them kind of talking on FaceTime one scene. So I mean, they seem better. So hopefully, I did see a preview from like a previous promo where he's saying something like, I'm trying to express myself and you're shutting me down, or something like that, something along those lines. So hopefully they're not going to regress or anything, but that preview is not really, because I don't remember seeing that scene yet. So I think it's going to be in the next 2 episodes, I think. Because usually when we see promos, it's usually like when we see promos at the end of the batches of episodes. Usually they are for scenes in the upcoming batches, but that one I haven't seen, like I said. So hopefully it's not gonna be so bad that they completely regress to the start of the season and they end up saying going their separate ways. But anyways, and then the last couple I wanted to talk about was Pat and Rhonda. They agreed to use the when I feel X, or I feel X when you did Y, instead of the you did this or you did that, and allow the other to respond. So we kind of get that little scene, and then next thing you know, with them, they're Pat Pat is helping Rhonda bring in some gardening things to our home. So she explains why she was feeling, she brings up the fact that he had, when they were last at her house, that he had brought up about moving in together and what he was going to do with his stuff if they decide to move in together into her house. And so she explains that in her last marriage that lasted 18 months, they had moved in. Her and the guy she had married moved in together a week before the wedding, and so after they married and she had moved into his house and all that. She tried to move some of her stuff into the bedroom that they were sharing, and he was saying stuff along the lines of, "Well, this is my bedroom, and I don't want your stuff inside it." Basically being controlling, and so she was hurt by that, and so that's why she didn't want to have the conversation, because she didn't want to make Pat feel like how her second ex-husband made her feel. And so he's like, well, I appreciate you sharing, and we don't really need to resolve this as of today. And he explains that he understands that her last husband didn't allow for the house that they shared to feel like hers too, and to kind of reflect her as well. So that's why he doesn't really want to change the space that she has created over the past 25 years. So, I mean, they seem to be communicating better too, and hopefully they're going to be on this momentum going forward. But again, I mean, it's all dependent on if they can, really just um, ride that momentum and be on a steady upward um, tick and all that. But you know, given how the show has gone on the last few seasons, since season 10 or 11 at least, yeah, it's all up in the air. But that's basically a nut in a nutshell. Um, I've noticed that typically um, one couple tends to occupy most of the time um, for each episode, and at least two couples tend to really not have that much going on. And usually those two couples are Jalen and Josh and Chad and Belinda. And then the other three tend to occupy most of the time. One of the other three couples tends to occupy most of the time, whether it's Will and Brittany, Derek and Megan, or uh, Pat and Rhonda. So, I mean, again, and as I said with Jalen and Josh, I'm hoping that because both Josh and Jalen and Belinda and Chad seem to be more in agreement than not. I'm hoping that you know they're not being in agreement because they just want to be in a relationship and they just don't want to rock the boat, so to speak, um, and cause issues. And so therefore they're not really having any deep conversations or any productive conversations about what their life will be like when they end up um, getting to decision day and beyond that, if they say yes. So um, because and like I said with Jalen and Josh, I'm not trying to have couples be in disagreement all the time because that's never good either. But to be always in agreement because it's like because at that point I feel like you're being a will where you're nonchalant about a lot of things and you're just trying to have fun all the time and you're not really getting the hard hitting conversation out of the way because particularly with Josh and Jalen, they're not. I don't remember them talking much like in depth about kids. Like they touched on it, but they didn't really say how many kids they wanted, when they wanted to have those kids, um, what their child rearing is going to look like for them. I don't remember them talking about finances much outside of the post nup. Um, like I don't remember them talking about whether or not they wanted to have a joint account and combine their finances like that. I didn't hear that at all. And particularly with uh, Chad and Belinda, I didn't hear anything about the finances part either. And at this point, I don't necessarily think they're gonna have any more kids. I mean, maybe Belinda might be able to have more kids if she wanted, biologically, but I don't think she's going to. I mean, maybe they could foster or something if that's what really they want to do, but I don't really think they want any more kids either. Um, I don't think Chad wants any more kids either. So I mean, that's going to be off the table. But I didn't hear them talk about finances. I didn't hear them talk about, you know, where they're going to live, like if they're going to live at her place, his place, like her place exclusively, his place exclusively, or try to get like a house or an apartment together. Um, and honestly, I didn't hear any of the couples talk about that either, like much. I mean, Rhonda and Pat kind of talked about the fact that um, her fears about moving in together, but they didn't really discuss what that was going to actually look like. So, and none of the other couples did. And to be honest, they're not. The only thing they're really talking about is their disagreements. Um, And I mean, well, except for maybe Megan and Derek, who actually are trying to talk about kids and how many kids they want, they sort of touched on it, but again, they're not going in too much into detail. And I feel like they need to kind of square that away before they say I do, or well, they kind of said I do, sorry, but before they say I do for the rest of my life at decision day, like they want to stay married at decision day. So I think what they need to do is they need to sit down, whether on camera or off camera, and go really into detail about what they specifically want, with their finances, with kids if they're thinking about having kids, and where they're going to live, because that's all important. And because we don't necessarily need to see it, but we need to know that they at least talked about it. And I don't see them doing that at all. They're always talking about some issue that they have because someone felt some type of way, about what someone said or someone did, and that's really about it. And it's usually never about the like the biggie, like the finances, kids, and the house. So I mean, at some point you're gonna have to talk about it, and I just feel like these people never seem to do that, and I'm just like, why? Um, I feel like they need to, um, the experts need to force them to do this, like sit down and talk about it, because clearly these people never seem to want to do that. Uh, and they never seem to want to do it until like the 11th hour, which is like a week before decision day or less. And at this point, they kind of need to force them to do that, once they get like, maybe not once they get back from the honeymoon, but at least a week after they get back, they need to start talking about it, because if they don't, it's gonna creep up on them, and then next thing you know, they're scrambling to talk about it, and they're sitting there going, well, what? Who the hell did I fall in love with? Because they're, saying something that doesn't align with what I want, and now you're having to seriously consider saying no on decision day because y'all didn't talk about this beforehand and try to come to some sort of compromise if you could. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's just these couples really are just ridiculous to me at this point, and like either they're not talking about it at all, or they're half-hearted talking about it, or halfway talking about it, and just it's not going to be good if they're not even trying to talk about it all the way through. So I don't know. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think of what happened in episode 7, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.